few years ago, I watched the third highest grossing anime film of all time, Your Name by Makoto Shinkai. It was an intriguing love story about body swapping between two people who had never met before, attempting to find each other in modern Japan. Despite the film's popular success, it didn't make a lasting impression on me. It was only years later when I watched two of Shinkai's earlier films, 5 centimeters per second and Children Who Chase Lost Voices, that the director's style left its mark. In both films, Shinkai explores nostalgia and childlike innocence, what it means to fall in love and lose that love suddenly and irrevocably due to forces beyond our immediate control. It is in these moments, he suggests, when everything appears to be lost to us, that we must turn to a childlike wonder with the world in order to survive. Being tough and brave is one option, but to stay true to ourselves, we need to reawaken our awe and nostalgia, the two ingredients that help us keep the past alive long after it dies away. This is the world according to Makoto Shinkai. Let's start with Children Who Chase Lost Voices. The film begins with the story of a young girl named Asuna. One day, while walking to school, Asuna is attacked by a mythical bear creature and only narrowly saved by a young boy. She takes an interest in the boy, Shun, who seems otherworldly and speaks of coming to her world on a mission from his own world, Agartha. Captivated by this, but saving her questions, Asuna promises to meet the boy the next day. That night, Shun unexpectedly falls to his death, leaving her questions unanswered and their brief love disintegrated. Searching for answers about the mysterious boy, Asuna talks with Mr. Murasaki, a substitute teacher at her school. Murasaki tells Asuna myths about the underworld, a place called Agartha, a place between life and death that can only be accessed by special crystals and is guarded by mythical creatures like the bear. In Agartha remain the gods that disappeared and knowledge yet unknown, and it is said to be a place where any kind of wish can be fulfilled, even resurrecting the dead, Mr. Murasaki tells her. Together the two end up travelling into the underworld of Agartha, the aim of their trip to bring back to life the loves they have both lost. The film depicts this journey in an awe-inspiring style. Shinkai's animations are aesthetically beautiful. He depicts the underworld as a vibrant place of spirituality and mystery. Rather than a dark and ominous place, it is bright and teeming with life, with green trees, rolling hills and incredible skies that seem more open and alive than the world above. The people of the underworld live a peaceful life away from the surface until it is their turn to die out. They have sealed themselves away from the world above because of the violence that outsiders bring, who seek to use the great powers hidden in their world for their own purposes. Their philosophy is one of acceptance. They have come to know and understand death as part of life's journey, and so they're not afraid of it. Each creature, they believe, serves a purpose in a broader cycle of life. Restoring someone to life from the dead is forbidden and goes against their cultural and spiritual practices. Each death comes in its own time, for its own reasons, and its own purposes. Becoming an adult is a slow process of coming to terms with this realization. It's the reason why so many kids' stories deal with death and sorrow, because growing older involves a fracturing of lost innocence and a recalibration with the difficult realities of independent survival. The moral of the film comes right near the end. To resurrect his wife from the dead, Mr. Murasaki has to sacrifice Asuna. The god of the underworld offers him a trade. Spoilers ahead. A life for a life, and he takes it. in a manner of both cruelty and desperation. His wife briefly returns in Asuna's body before another character interrupts the transfusion process. "Find happiness," his wife says, before dying again in his arms. There are strong parallels between the story and the ancient Greek myth Orpheus and Eurydice. In the myth, Orpheus travels to the underworld to rescue his wife, Eurydice. The god of the underworld, Hades, tells Orpheus that he can take his wife back to the surface on one condition, that he does not look at her until they have both walked back to the surface and left the darkness of the underworld behind them. They begin their slow ascent, with the shade of his wife following close behind him. Famously close to the exit, Orpheus begins to think that Hades has fooled him and that no one is following him, and so he turns around. For a moment he sees the shade of his wife before she is whisked backwards, trapping her in the underworld forever. He has lost his one and only chance, and ends up dying alone. The idea of looking back has multiple meanings here. In my view, it's a metaphor about death itself. Simply by going to the underworld, Orpheus was destined to fail his quest from the start, because he was looking back at the past rather than moving on. There was no forward-looking version of his wife to ever see. She only ever existed behind him in the days gone by. To live with the death of his wife, he had to look forward. In other words, he had to not live with her at all. The same is true of Mr. Murasaki. In a parallel to the myth, Murasaki was destined to fail in the quest from the start, because he was defying the entire process of life and time itself. To bring someone back from the dead, in Shinkai's telling, is to play with the order of things, which is to mess up the spiritual balance of the world. Every death occurs in its own time, and so reversing this is a form of spiritual desecration. This idea of leaving the past behind is repeated elsewhere in Shinkai's films. In another film, 5 centimeters per second, he explores the idea of leaving behind our younger selves. The young version of ourselves and young love essentially die away as we get older, replaced by the new version of who we currently are, with the imperative to make new decisions rather than trying to repeat the past. 5 centimeters per second starts with the story of Takaki becoming friends with a girl, Akari, at elementary school. Upon graduation, Akari moves away with her parents. One night, during a severe snowstorm, Takaki travels by train to see her, and they have their first kiss. He has brought her a letter, but it gets blown away in the storm. She has written him a letter, but she decides in the last moment not to give it to him. He reflects on the passing moment while they lay together in each other's arms. And right then, it felt like I finally understood where everything was. Eternity, the heart, the soul. It was like I was sharing every experience I had ever had in my past 13 years. And then, the next moment, I became unbearably sad. I didn't know what to do with these feelings, her warmth, her soul. Then, right then, I clearly understood we would never be together, our lives not yet fully realized, the vast expanse of time. The film is filled with these beautiful reflections. As Takaki grows older, he settles down into a relationship and job he doesn't really want to be in. He still has the same longing, however, for the beautiful parts of life, and for his younger self, and the young love he once felt so strongly. Reality is brimming over with beautiful things, scintillating feelings. How many of them have I been missing, he asks at one point. His new girlfriend has a sense that something is amiss, that he's not really there in the relationship at all. He's always looking past me, at something far off in the distance, and he'll never look at me, not ever. And always the voice of Akari haunts him. That time they met in elementary school, when the cherry blossoms were falling, and she told him, "They say it's 5 centimeters per second, the speed of a falling cherry petal. 5 centimeters per second. In the end, it all goes by so fast."